Hey there, I'm Kathy with the Traveling Homesteader and Gyroscope Farm, and today is the ultimate in traveling. Yeah, so I'm going to be taking a trip, and I'm going to bring you along with me for some tips and tricks and some things that may be able to help you along the way in travels, literal travels, in case you need them. First off, get to the airport reasonably early. Remember, you can now check in online. You can have stuff downloaded to your phone. You can even have your boarding passes printed out at home, which is awesome. But I got to figure out, and maybe you know this, how to get in the earlier boarding sections. They're just calling Section A now for my flight, and I'm in Section C. But today's venture is to go from West Coast to East Coast, and hopefully that'll be a decent flight. Is the season for traveling, and here we are at our midway point in Denver. It's gonna be a fun ride. Here it is now, after all the flights, 11 o'clock at night, waiting for the rental car shuttle. Yay, new airport. So now that I got things settled out with the rental car, note to self as a little tip to traveling. If you're going to be renting a car, you may want to consider making sure that you have a Visa card or a major credit card. If you have a debit card, they will make sure that you, on one hand, the major car companies, Hertz, Enterprise, all those, they will take debit card under certain conditions, which is maybe a little known secret. Even though your debit card may have a Visa logo on it, they will still say it's a debit card, and you need to have an additional $500 over the amount of your rental cost versus the $200 over the rental cost with a Visa card or a major credit card. They may also end up checking your credit score if you use a debit card. In addition, they could also ask to have your return flight information. So those are three things that I learned along the way, that if you have a debit card you want to use at a rental car company, you may need to have. So you may need to have, they may check your credit score, they may need to have your return flight information, and they may need to have an additional amount of money, totaling up about $500. Hey there, so now that we're on our trip, I am actually in Pennsylvania currently, just having gone to a friend's wedding, and was able to see her family and some other friends, and it's been really rather pleasant because this particular family I've known since I was 3 years old. And so just as we go along, one of the things that I might mention is that when you go on trips, whether it's for family or friends or just for an adventure, you might want to check out new and different places in the area where you're going. And in this case, this is a little spot that I saw by the side of the road, and I believe it's in Hanover, Pennsylvania. I'm just coming from my friend's place where it was a wonderful after wedding gathering of all the people involved. And it was just really rather pleasant to have a kind of a low-key day. And so something as a tip that you might want to do is actually just get to know the area where you are. Maybe take an extra day or two and get to see different places. And in my case, I happen to be not that far from Gettysburg in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And so many people were going to those places to see the historic sites of Gettysburg and see the Amish country in Lancaster. It's really kind of nice to explore an area where you go. So if you get that chance, that might be kind of interesting too, is before you go, you might want to kind of explore on a map and see what maybe campsites or historical sites or maybe shopping areas might be of interest to go see. And generally speaking, when you find those places, you can find good deals in hotels, in shopping areas, and maybe things that even local people might not know. I remember when I went and moved to China, I kind of started exploring the city where I was going and to learn more about it. And I ended up finding a couple of different museums and different parks that were around. And I ended up finding this one spot that as we were going to work, we ended up finding it. And this couple who were also American that had been there a year or so previous, I said, oh, look, we went right by a place that I'd Googled and found out about just before I moved there. And I said, oh, that's a museum, and it's a museum and an art gallery, and it's really rather nice. And the woman said, I never knew that was there, and I've been here a year, and they went by it all the time. And so there's those sorts of things that you might be able to find cool in different places that even local people or familiar people aren't familiar with. So that's kind of a new and different tip as well. So there's another little tip as I'm on my way back home. I'm on a layover in St. Louis, and I actually got chatting with some of the flight attendants, and they're really nice and helpful. But something that I learned from them is just to be nice. Being nice to people who work the planes actually goes a long way. And there happened to be a woman who put her luggage in a way that was kind of inappropriate for up top, and she got cranky at the man that was trying to help her and said, no, you can't do that, you gotta change it. And she got the woman flying like I am, got cranky at the man who's in the crew. And sometimes if you do that, you might not get extra help. And a lot of the crew members have long, hard jobs, and they gotta balance things and remember things. And like this particular plane has a rather thin aisle, and so they can't just push the juice cart or drink cart up and down the aisle like they do in other larger planes. So like when there's not enough room to go up and down the aisle for the drink carts, the people working the plane have to carry on a tray people's drinks. So we had a little turbulence, and I could see that it was a little more difficult for them to not only walk down the aisle because of the turbulence, but people kind of leading into the aisle made it a little extra difficult as well. So it's not like people who work flights have the easiest of jobs. So being nice to them is helpful. But like too, right now, my plane, it's the first time I've flown on a direct flight that has a stop. I happen to be stopped in St. Louis, and I'm going on to Denver. And they just finished servicing the plane back here, putting drinks and ice and all that jazz, checking the bathrooms. And so it's about waiting and hanging out. And so I think laying low and just kind of being nice to people, even while you wait on the plane, is kind of helpful. And I know people travel in different ways. Several people that I knew going to this wedding had driven. I have a friend in Connecticut. I'm friends of the family. One of the family members, or one of the people that got married. Her family was all going down to driving South Carolina. So I'm flying from the West Coast to the East Coast, and then back again. So whenever you're traveling, I always figure whenever I travel to be nice. Say please and thank you. That goes a long ways. Be slightly patient. I know the one thing I need to improve on is when I drive. I get a little bit cranky when I drive, so people don't kind of do how I drive, how I learned how to drive like the East Coast. Get out of my way when I'm trying to pass you. Or, don't stay slowed down in the fast lane. That sort of thing. So I know that's something I have to improve on. But when you're, going to a restaurant, say thanks, or maybe add a little extra tip, because those people work hard too. When you're on a plane, say please and thank you. Get out of their way when they need help. All that stuff. So hopefully that's an extra added tip. As I mentioned earlier about how the woman in the plane that I was on was like maneuvering her luggage in a really weird way, people now are traveling more often, like these people are, with carry-on luggage. Very few people are actually checking luggage. And I found it rather interesting that more and more people are doing that, and I think it's in part because of how luggage gets lost so well. So when you're deciding what to pack in your carry-on luggage, if you're going to go on a trip, you might want to consider folding your clothing and rolling it up rather than doing a flat fold. Or you can even purchase bags that you can suck all the air out of them, and so they're like vacuum sealed clothing bags. And that way you have more room in your bag for other things. I hope some of these tips were helpful for you, and thank you for stopping by Gyroscope Farm and the Traveling Homesteader.